And we will begin with that breaking news that London police are now investigating claims of a series of potentially illegal parties in and around Downing Street over the last 2 years. That confirmation followed the latest reporting revolving around allegations the Prime Minister had a birthday party in Downing Street on the 19th of June 2020. Well, let's get straight into this with Giles Gibson, our London correspondent, who joins me now live. And Giles, tell us exactly what are the police saying, and do we know which alleged events they're looking into?
Well, Dame Cressida Dick, who is the commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, she's been speaking to a committee in the Greater London Assembly in the last couple of hours, and she has said that this investigation is going to focus on a number of events that took place over the course of the last 2 years, both on Downing Street as well as in Whitehall. So the scope of this is not just looking at 10 Downing Street. Crucially, this is also looking at potential social gatherings that took place during periods of lockdown here in the UK in government departments as well. Ollie, there is no doubting that this marks a really major shift in this scandal for Boris Johnson and for 10 Downing Street, because, of course, in the past, we've had Sue Gray, this civil servant, investigating this. We've been waiting for her to file her report into multiple social gatherings, allegations that parties took place in 10 Downing Street over the course of lockdown periods here in the UK. But as a senior civil servant, she doesn't really have the power to hand out any punishments. She doesn't have the power to fire anybody in terms of Downing Street staff or even ministers and that kind of thing. Whereas, in contrast, the Metropolitan Police, of course, have the power to hand out criminal charges if they find evidence of clear wrongdoing, and they could also hand out fines as well. So the stakes here have just suddenly got even higher for Boris Johnson and his team inside 10 Downing Street.
Well, Giles, you were mentioning that report from the civil servant Sue Gray into all of this that we were expecting to be published this week. Are we still expecting that?
Well, we've heard from the Cabinet Office via a spokesperson saying that Sue Gray's investigation will continue despite this announcement from the Metropolitan Police. But they've also very importantly said that her report won't be published while the Metropolitan Police investigation is still ongoing. So we now have a scenario, Ollie, where we could be looking at weeks or even months to wait for Sue Gray to file her report into allegations of parties held at 10 Downing Street. In the meantime, we are still seeing calls for Boris Johnson to resign. Not surprisingly, the leader of the opposition, Labour Party, Keir Starmer, has once again called on Boris Johnson to step down in the wake of this latest story that was put out by ITV News here in the UK. And there are also more cracks starting to appear within the Conservative Party itself. We've heard from Baroness Varsi, who is a member of the House of Lords, and she's also formerly was chair of the Conservative Party. She said that Prime Minister Boris Johnson should think long and hard about what is in the best interests of the country.
Well, on that very note, Giles, what do you think this does for Boris Johnson's chances of surviving as leader and Prime Minister? Because a number of MPs in his Conservative Party, hadn't they, had been saying that they would be waiting for Sue Gray to report. Well, you seem to be saying that that won't be coming anytime soon.
Yeah, Ollie, that's the mantra, hasn't it, that we've been hearing over and over again, both from Prime Minister Boris Johnson and from senior members of his cabinet whenever they've been grilled on the radio or on television here in the UK about this ongoing scandal. They've been saying we have to wait for the Sue Gray investigation to wrap up, for the facts to be established, and then we can talk about next steps. But we now have this scenario, as I was just saying, that it could take weeks or even months for Sue Gray to finally file her report. So that defence, that line from 10 Downing Street and from senior Conservatives is not really going to work anymore, is not going to cut the mustard. Really the question is now, what does this do to the thinking of Conservative MPs who were waiting for Sue Gray's investigation to wrap up, who were waiting for her report before they decided whether they're going to send a letter to the chair of the 1922 committee, Graham Brady, potentially calling for a no confidence vote in Boris Johnson. There could perhaps be Conservative MPs who see this as creating a bit of breathing space, that the Metropolitan Police investigation will continue for weeks and months, and perhaps the heat will come off Boris Johnson and off 10 Downing Street. But there must also be Conservative MPs right now who are just really concerned that this scandal is going to rumble on for weeks and weeks and months, and who are now perhaps being pushed over the edge and potentially, as we speak, starting to write out a letter to Graham Brady, the chair of the 1922 committee, calling for that vote of no confidence in the British Prime Minister.
OK, Giles, thank you. Giles Gibson reporting live from London on that breaking news that the Metropolitan Police are now investigating a series of claims of parties which may have breached lockdown regulations over the last 2 years here in the UK.